New info reveals teams were not running their sustainable fuels at testing. Lando's title defense is in trouble. As McLaren updates Papaya Rules, let's get into the latest F1 news. Picture this. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, walks into the Ferrari garage for his second season wearing the iconic red suit. But something's different this time. The energy has shifted. The mindset has transformed. And after topping the timing sheets in Barcelona testing, Hamilton just dropped a bombshell that could change everything we thought we knew about Ferrari's 2026 championship chances. What I'm about to share with you goes way beyond just another fast lap time. This is about a fundamental shift happening inside one of Formula One's most legendary teams, and why Hamilton believes this could finally be the year Ferrari returns to their winning ways. Let me start with what actually happened in Barcelona, because the headlines only tell part of the story. While most teams were busy figuring out their new 2026 machinery, Hamilton wasn't just setting fast times. He was setting the fastest time. A blistering 1 minute 16.348 on soft tires during the final day of testing. But here's what the timing sheets don't show you: the complete transformation happening within Ferrari's walls. Hamilton didn't mince words when he spoke about what he's witnessing at Ferrari right now. He's talking about experiencing a completely new energy throughout the entire organization, not just from the engineers or the mechanics, but from every single person wearing Ferrari red. According to the British champion, there's a winning mentality permeating through the team that he says feels stronger than ever before. Now, before you start thinking this is just typical preseason optimism, let me tell you why this matters so much more than you might realize. Hamilton has been around Formula One long enough to know the difference between genuine championship potential and wishful thinking. This is a driver who's won titles with Mercedes, who knows what championship caliber teams feel like from the inside. When he says he's sensing something special at Ferrari, that carries serious weight. But let's dig deeper into what actually happened during those 5 days in Barcelona, because the story gets even more interesting. While lap times weren't officially published, this was a closed-door test after all. Unofficial sources revealed that Hamilton's Ferrari completed an impressive 442 laps across the testing period. That's second only to Mercedes in terms of mileage, and which tells us something crucial about Ferrari's reliability and preparation. Hamilton was particularly pleased with the consistency they achieved. No major technical problems, no significant downtime, just solid, reliable running that allowed them to gather massive amounts of data. In Formula One, that kind of trouble-free testing is often more valuable than setting purple sectors. You can have the fastest car in the world, but if it keeps breaking down, you're not winning championships. What's fascinating is how Hamilton approached this testing differently compared to his debut Ferrari season. Remember, last year his first wet weather experience in a Ferrari came during an actual race weekend, which he described as incredibly challenging. This time around, and they deliberately started the test with a complete wet day, something teams usually try to avoid. But Hamilton saw this as an opportunity to gain valuable experience and knowledge about how the car behaves in challenging conditions. This strategic thinking reveals something important about both Hamilton's maturity as a driver and Ferrari's willingness to prioritize long-term learning over short-term headlines. They're not just chasing lap times, they're building a comprehensive understanding of their package. The technical side of things looks promising too. Ferrari's SF26 appeared to handle well during the testing sessions, and the team managed to complete their running across 3 of the 5 available days without any major setbacks. When you consider that teams like Williams had to delay their car debut entirely, Ferrari's smooth testing program starts looking even more impressive. But here's where Hamilton's comments get really interesting. Despite topping the timing charts, he's maintaining a healthy dose of realism about where Ferrari stands. He acknowledges that Mercedes put in excellent running, along with Red Bull and Haas. The competition is clearly going to be fierce in 2026, and Hamilton knows that 1 week of testing doesn't determine championship outcomes. What strikes me most about Hamilton's assessment is his focus on the human element. He's not just talking about aerodynamic packages or power unit performance. He's talking about people. The enthusiasm he's seeing from every team member, the quality of their debriefs, the clarity of communication. These might sound like soft factors, but they're often what separates championship teams from also-rans. Hamilton specifically mentioned how everyone is bringing new energy this year, which suggests Ferrari has done some serious soul-searching after their disappointing 2025 campaign. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a team is a reality check that forces them to examine every aspect of their operation. The timing of this renewed energy couldn't be better. Formula One in 2026 represents a massive technical reset with new regulations, which means traditional hierarchies can be reshuffled. Teams that get their fundamentals right early in these regulation cycles often enjoy sustained success. Ferrari appears to be positioning themselves perfectly for this opportunity. Looking ahead, Ferrari's next test will come during the official pre-season sessions in Bahrain. The first runs from February 11th through 13th, followed by another Bahrain test from February 18th through 20th. These sessions will be much more revealing since they'll be open to media scrutiny and will include all teams running their final specifications. What I find particularly encouraging for Ferrari fans is Hamilton's emphasis on development being key moving forward. He's not suggesting they've already found the ultimate solution. Instead, he's talking about leaving no stone unturned and making sure every decision is clear and concise. This sounds like a team that's learned from past mistakes and is approaching development with renewed focus and discipline. The championship fight in 2026 is shaping up to be absolutely incredible. You have Mercedes looking strong based on their testing mileage, the Red Bull bringing their usual competitiveness, and now Ferrari, with what appears to be a renewed sense of purpose and a 7-time world champion who believes in their winning mentality. Hamilton's confidence isn't just about the car's performance, it's about the complete package Ferrari is building. When a driver of his caliber talks about feeling winning mentality from every single person in the team, that suggests Ferrari has addressed some of the organizational issues that have held them back in recent years. As we look toward the Melbourne season opener on March 8th, Ferrari appears to be in their strongest position for years, not just because of their Barcelona testing performance, but because of the fundamental shift in mindset that Hamilton is describing. Championships aren't won purely on technical merit. They require the perfect combination of speed, reliability, strategy, and that intangible winning mentality that separates great teams from good ones. If Hamilton is right about what he's sensing at Ferrari, 2026 could finally be the year the prancing horse returns to Formula One's summit. Picture this. A mysterious black Formula One car emerges from the shadows of Barcelona's Circuit de Catalunya, and suddenly every engineer in the paddock is scrambling to understand what they're looking at. This isn't just any car. This is Adrian Newey's first masterpiece for Aston Martin, and it might just change everything we thought we knew about Formula One design. When the AMR 26 rolled out for its first test run, it wasn't just another pre-season shakedown. This was the automotive equivalent of watching a master painter unveil their latest work. Except this painting could potentially rewrite the rules of aerodynamics and suspension engineering in Formula One. Adrian Newey needs no introduction to Formula One fans. This is the man who created the dominant Red Bull cars that Sebastian Vettel used to claim 4 consecutive championships. The genius behind some of the most innovative and successful designs in modern Formula One history. And now, for the first time in his illustrious career, he's wearing Aston Martin green. But here's where things get really interesting. The AMR 26 isn't just another pretty face with a new badge. This car represents something far more significant. It's Newey's bold statement that he's willing to push boundaries that other designers simply won't touch. Bernie Collins, Aston Martin's former strategy chief, immediately noticed something that made her do a double take when she saw the car hit the track. The front and rear suspension systems aren't just different. They're revolutionary in ways that could make other teams fundamentally rethink their entire approach to car design. Let's start with what makes this suspension system so extraordinary. In traditional Formula One design, engineers follow established patterns that have been proven to work. It's safe, it's predictable, and it keeps the lawyers happy. But Newey has never been one to play it safe. The front suspension on the AMR 26 features what technical experts are calling a multi-link wishbone arrangement that positions the upper rear leg of the assembly lower and further back on the chassis than anyone has ever dared to try before. To understand why this is significant, imagine trying to balance on a tightrope while simultaneously juggling, except in this case, the tightrope is aerodynamic efficiency and the juggling balls are mechanical performance, structural integrity, and regulatory compliance. Most designers wouldn't risk this approach because it's uncharted territory. There's no guarantee it will work, and if it fails, you've potentially wasted an entire season of development. But that's precisely why Newey is different. While other designers are asking, what if this doesn't work? Newey is asking, what if this revolutionizes everything? Collins explains it perfectly when she describes how suspension serves multiple masters in Formula One. The primary job is keeping four wheels in contact with the ground at all times. Lose that contact and you lose traction, which means you lose speed. But drivers also demand suspension that gives them confidence through corners. That communicates what the car is doing beneath them. Then there's Newey's perspective. As what Collins calls the pure aerodynamicist, he's positioning the suspension not just to handle mechanical loads, but to generate downforce or reduce drag. He's essentially forcing mechanical components to serve aerodynamic purposes, pushing them into configurations that would make traditional suspension engineers uncomfortable. This is where the AMR26 becomes truly fascinating. Newey is gambling that the aerodynamic gains from his unconventional suspension positioning will more than compensate for any mechanical compromises. It's a high-stakes bet that could either establish Aston Martin as the new benchmark for innovation or serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of overthinking Formula One design. But the front suspension is just the beginning. The rear of the AMR26 tells an even more dramatic story of Newey's willingness to challenge conventional thinking. Traditional Formula One cars mount their rear suspension wishbones to the gearbox. This makes perfect sense from an engineering standpoint. The gearbox is incredibly strong, providing the structural integrity needed to handle suspension loads. It's also conveniently located and helps package internal suspension components efficiently. Newey has thrown this conventional wisdom out the window. Instead of mounting the rear suspension to the gearbox, he's attached it to the rear wing pillars. This decision represents a fundamental shift in how we think about Formula One car architecture. To understand the audacity of this choice, consider the engineering challenges involved. The rear wing pillars now have to be strong enough to handle suspension loads while remaining light enough not to compromise the car's weight distribution. They need to maintain structural integrity under the massive forces generated by modern Formula One cars, while simultaneously serving their original purpose of supporting the rear wing. But here's where Newey's genius becomes apparent. By raising the rear suspension mounting point to the rear wing pillars, he's essentially created what amounts to a lower element of the rear wing. This isn't just suspension. It's an aerodynamic component that happens to connect the wheels to the car. Collins points to the similarity with what was once called the monkey seat, a small aerodynamic element positioned below the main rear wing to generate additional downforce. Newey has essentially turned his rear suspension into a functional aerodynamic surface, using its position to manipulate airflow and create downforce that wouldn't exist with traditional gearbox mounting. The implications of this design philosophy extend far beyond Aston Martin. If the AMR26 proves successful, other teams will be forced to reconsider their own approaches. We could see a complete evolution in how Formula One cars are conceived and constructed. However, this revolutionary approach comes with significant risks. The technical challenges of making rear wing pillars strong enough to handle suspension loads while maintaining optimal aerodynamic performance are immense. The manufacturing tolerances required are incredibly tight, and any failure could be catastrophic both from a performance and safety standpoint. Yet, there's also the question of adjustability and setup flexibility. Traditional suspension mounting allows teams to make fine adjustments to suspension geometry to optimize performance for different tracks. Newey's approach may limit this flexibility in exchange for aerodynamic gains. The AMR26's debut in Barcelona was particularly noteworthy for its timing and presentation. Emerging late in the test session wearing an all-black livery, the car immediately commanded attention. The black paint scheme wasn't just for dramatic effect. It serves a practical purpose by making it difficult for competitors to photograph and analyze the car's detailed features. This strategic approach to revealing the car demonstrates Aston Martin's understanding that they're potentially sitting on something revolutionary. Every detail that competitors can analyze gives them insight into Newey's thinking and potentially allows them to develop countermeasures. The integration of Honda's new power unit adds another layer of complexity to the AMR26 story. Aston Martin hasn't produced their own gearbox in many years, yet they've managed to bring together a new engine, new gearbox, and revolutionary chassis design into a cohesive package. The logistical and engineering challenges of coordinating these elements cannot be overstated. Collins expressed amazement at the team's ability to bring all these components together successfully. It's one thing to design revolutionary suspension geometry on paper. It's another entirely to manufacture, assemble, and test it in the real world, while simultaneously integrating completely new powertrain components. The early test data from Barcelona suggests that while lap times weren't immediately competitive, this isn't necessarily cause for concern. Teams often run conservative engine and gearbox settings during initial testing, prioritizing reliability and data gathering over outright speed. The real value of these early tests lies in validating the aerodynamic concepts that will drive development through the season. Looking ahead to the official preseason tests in Bahrain, the Formula One community will be watching the AMR26 with unprecedented interest. These tests will provide the first real indication of whether Newey's revolutionary approach translates into competitive advantage on track. The broader implications for Formula One are fascinating to consider. If the AMR26 proves successful, we may be witnessing the beginning of a new era in Formula One design philosophy. Other teams will be forced to innovate or fall behind, potentially leading to the most significant technical evolution the sport has seen in years. Conversely, if the concept doesn't deliver the expected performance gains, it will serve as a reminder that innovation in Formula One requires not just brilliant ideas, but flawless execution under the most demanding conditions imaginable. What makes this situation particularly compelling is that it represents everything Formula One should be about: pushing boundaries, challenging assumptions, and constantly searching for that extra tenth of a second that separates winners from also-rans. The Newey's willingness to venture into uncharted technical territory embodies the spirit of innovation that makes Formula One the pinnacle of motorsport engineering. As we await the season opener in Melbourne, one thing is certain: the AMR26 has already succeeded in capturing the imagination of the Formula One world. Whether it can translate that intrigue into championship-winning performance remains to be seen. But Adrian Newey has once again proven that in Formula One, the most dangerous approach is playing it safe. The coming months will determine whether this bold gamble pays off or becomes a cautionary tale. But regardless of the outcome, the AMR26 represents exactly the kind of innovative thinking that keeps Formula One at the cutting edge of automotive technology. Today, we finally have our answer, and trust me, it's going to change everything about how we view the 2026 Formula One season. McLaren has just dropped a bombshell announcement that's sending shockwaves through the paddock. After months of speculation, heated debates, and behind-the-scenes negotiations, the Woking-based team has made their position crystal clear, and the implications for both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are absolutely massive. But before we dive into what this means for the upcoming season, let me take you back to that fateful day at Monza that changed everything. Picture the scene. It's the Italian Grand Prix, September 2025. Oscar Piastri is leading the championship by a comfortable margin. He's won 7 races. He's driving like a man possessed. Victory at Monza would virtually seal his first world title. But then disaster strikes. McLaren's pit crew has what can only be described as a nightmare. Piastri's stop takes forever. Norris, who pitted earlier, suddenly finds himself ahead of his teammate when Piastri rejoins the track. The championship leader is now running second to his own teammate. What happens next still gives me goosebumps when I think about it. The radio crackles to life. McLaren's race engineer delivers the message that would haunt Piastri for months. "Oscar, we need you to let Lando through for the championship fight." Just like that, 34 points of championship advantage started evaporating. Piastri, being the team player he is, reluctantly complies. Norris takes the victory, and more importantly, crucial championship points. From that moment on, everything unraveled for the young Australian. He didn't win another race for the rest of the season. The confidence seemed shattered. The momentum had completely shifted. Meanwhile, Norris rode that wave all the way to his first world championship, with Max Verstappen's late-season charge making things even more dramatic. When the dust settled, Piastri had dropped to third in the final standings. In post-season interviews, he couldn't hide his disappointment, stating that what happened with the pit stops obviously played a role in his title hopes crumbling. The motorsport world was divided. Some praised McLaren for making the tough strategic call. Others condemned them for robbing a deserving champion of his moment. All eyes turned to this off-season. Would McLaren change their approach? Would they implement team orders favoring the defending champion? Would Piastri get a fair shot at redemption? The speculation was intense, the rumors were flying, and the pressure on team principal Andrea Stella was immense. And now we have our answer. McLaren has officially reaffirmed their Papaya regulations for the 2026 season. But what does that actually mean? Let me break this down for you because this is where things get really interesting. McLaren's Papaya regulations are essentially their internal rulebook for how their drivers compete against each other. They're built on 4 core principles: fairness, integrity, equal opportunities, and sportsmanship. Sounds simple enough, right? But as we saw last season, implementing these principles when a championship is on the line is anything but straightforward. Andrea Stella has been remarkably transparent about their decision-making process. He revealed that McLaren conducted a thorough review of everything that happened in 2025. They analyzed every controversial moment, every strategic decision, every team order. They gathered feedback from both drivers, the engineering team, and even external experts. The conclusion? McLaren believes they got it right. Stella admitted that when they reviewed most of their decisions from last season, they concluded they would make the same calls again. That's a bold stance, especially considering the criticism they faced. But here's where it gets fascinating. While McLaren is sticking to their fundamental principles, they're also acknowledging that managing internal competition requires an enormous amount of work and creates complexity that sometimes hurts the team's overall performance. Stella mentioned they're looking for ways to streamline their operations and make life easier for everyone involved. This is huge news for Oscar Piastri, and here's why. Despite Lando Norris entering 2026 as the defending champion, McLaren is guaranteeing that both drivers will have equal opportunities to fight for the title. There won't be any predetermined number 1 driver. There won't be automatic team orders favoring Norris. Both drivers start the season on completely equal footing. Think about what this means psychologically for Piastri. Last season ended in heartbreak, but he's getting a genuine shot at redemption. McLaren is essentially saying, "We believe in you, we think you can win the championship, and we're not going to stand in your way." Piastri himself has been refreshingly honest about the situation. He's acknowledged that the internal regulations get talked about far more in public than they do behind closed doors. He's described the team's approach as constantly evolving, and he seems genuinely optimistic about the refinements they've made for 2026. What's particularly encouraging for Piastri fans is his attitude heading into the new season. He's described himself as excited, and multiple paddock insiders are predicting he'll return with a vengeance. Martin Brundle, one of the most respected voices in Formula One, has gone on record saying he expects Piastri to come back stronger than ever. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. History is not on Lando Norris's side when it comes to defending his maiden championship. Defending a first title is notoriously difficult in Formula One. Add in the major regulation changes for 2026, the intense pressure of being the defending champion, and a teammate who's hungrier than ever for his first title. and Norris faces an uphill battle. The regulation changes for 2026 cannot be understated. New aerodynamic packages, revised power unit regulations, and updated technical specifications mean that last year's championship-winning car is essentially irrelevant. Every team starts from scratch, and McLaren's advantage could disappear overnight. Early testing results from Barcelona have been intriguing. McLaren actually trailed both Mercedes and Ferrari in several key metrics, suggesting that their 2026 car might not have the immediate pace advantage they enjoyed last season. This makes the internal battle between Norris and Piastri even more compelling. The psychological dynamics within McLaren are absolutely fascinating to consider. Norris has the confidence that comes with being a world champion, but he also has the pressure of defending his title. Piastri has the hunger of someone who feels a championship was taken from him, plus the burning desire to prove himself on the biggest stage. From a strategic standpoint, McLaren's decision to maintain their Papaya regulations could actually give them a competitive advantage. While other teams might struggle with unclear hierarchies or political infighting, McLaren has a proven system for managing their drivers fairly while still extracting maximum performance from both cars. But there are risks too. Internal competition can be a double-edged sword. It can push both drivers to perform at their absolute peak, but it can also lead to costly mistakes, strategic complications, and points lost to rival teams. McLaren is betting that the benefits outweigh the risks. The broader Formula One community is watching this situation with intense interest. How McLaren manages their driver pairing could set a precedent for how other teams handle similar situations. Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull all have talented driver lineups, and they're undoubtedly taking notes on McLaren's approach. Looking ahead to the 2026 season, several factors could determine whether McLaren's Papaya regulations prove successful. The competitiveness of their car is obviously crucial. If they have a championship-contending machine, the internal battle becomes more intense. If they're struggling for pace, the regulations become less relevant. Track-specific performance will also play a role. Some circuits might favor Norris's driving style, while others could suit Piastri better. McLaren's ability to optimize both cars for each driver's strengths while maintaining fairness will be constantly tested. The season opener in Bahrain will be absolutely critical. It's the first real test of McLaren's refined approach to managing their drivers. How they handle qualifying, race strategy, and any potential on-track battles will set the tone for the entire championship fight. What makes this story so compelling is that it's about more than just two drivers fighting for a championship. It's about organizational philosophy, competitive ethics, and whether a team can successfully balance individual ambitions with collective success. McLaren's decision to reaffirm their Papaya regulations sends a powerful message to the entire Formula One grid. They're saying that fairness and integrity aren't just corporate buzzwords. They're fundamental principles worth maintaining, even when it creates additional complexity and challenges. For Oscar Piastri, this represents the ultimate opportunity for redemption. He has a legitimate shot at becoming world champion without having to worry about predetermined team hierarchies or political favoritism. The stage is set for what could be one of the most dramatic intra-team battles in Formula One history. The 2026 season promises to be absolutely explosive, and McLaren's driver pairing will be at the center of it all. Will Norris successfully defend his maiden championship? Will Piastri claim his revenge and secure his first title? Or will their internal battle hand the championship to a rival team? One thing's for certain, we're in for an incredible season of racing. If you told me a few years ago that Mercedes would go from struggling in the midfield to absolutely dominating Barcelona testing, I would have called you crazy. But here we are in 2026, and the Silver Arrows just pulled off something that has the entire Formula One paddock talking. What happened in Barcelona last week wasn't just impressive, it was a statement. While other teams were nursing their new cars around the track like they were made of glass, Mercedes was out there treating their W17 like a race car. 500 laps over 3 days. That's not testing, that's a marathon. But here's what makes this even more incredible. This isn't just about putting miles on the clock. The 2026 regulations completely revolutionized Formula One. We're talking about entirely new power units, fresh electronics packages, and chassis regulations that threw everything we knew about car design out the window. Most teams would be lucky to complete a handful of clean laps without something going wrong. Yet Mercedes didn't just survive this challenge, they thrived. Andrew Chauvelin, their trackside engineering director who's been with the team since their bar days, couldn't hide his excitement. The man who's seen it all was genuinely impressed by what they accomplished. Think about what reliability means in this context. When you're dealing with completely new systems, every component is essentially an unknown quantity. Power units that have never run extended sessions, electronics that haven't been proven in real-world conditions, chassis designs based on theoretical calculations rather than years of data. The fact that George Russell and Kimi Antonelli could rack up those kinds of numbers without major issues tells us something profound about the work happening behind the scenes at Brackley and Brixworth. This level of preparation doesn't happen by accident. But let's dig deeper into what this reliability actually means for Mercedes championship prospects. In modern Formula One, data is everything. Every lap provides thousands of data points about how the car behaves, how systems interact, and where performance can be found. While their competitors were dealing with failures and lost track time, Mercedes was building a database that could prove invaluable when the season begins. The psychological impact cannot be understated either. When your drivers can focus on learning the car instead of wondering if it'll make it back to the pits, that builds confidence. When your engineers can run their programs without constantly firefighting reliability issues, they can actually optimize performance. Chauvelin mentioned something particularly interesting about their progress pattern. Day by day, they weren't just solving problems, they were getting faster. That's the holy grail of testing. It suggests that the fundamental platform is sound, and the improvements they're making are actually translating into lap time gains. This progressive improvement pattern is exactly what you want to see with new regulations. Many teams struggle because they build a car that hits a performance ceiling quickly. You can polish it and refine it, but the basic architecture limits how much faster you can go. When Chauvelin talks about making progress that actually makes them quicker each day, it suggests the W17 has significant, untapped potential. The contrast with some of their rivals couldn't be more stark. While Mercedes was methodically working through their programs, other teams were dealing with the typical new regulation headaches. Broken parts, system failures, limited running, all the things that make engineers wake up in cold sweats. What's particularly encouraging for Mercedes fans is how systematic their approach has been. They didn't just throw the car at the track and hope for the best. They had specific objectives for each day, and the reliability allowed them to actually achieve those objectives. That kind of structured progression is what separates championship contending teams from also-rans. The Silverstone shakedown earlier had already shown promise, but Barcelona confirmed it wasn't a fluke. When you can replicate that kind of performance across different venues and conditions, it suggests the underlying package is genuinely robust. Looking ahead to Bahrain, Chauvelin's comments reveal the team's confidence level. They're not worried about basic functionality anymore. They're moving into optimization mode. Setup exploration, performance extraction, race preparation. These are the concerns of a team that has already solved the fundamental challenges. The temperature comment is particularly insightful. Barcelona in winter isn't representative of actual racing conditions. Bahrain will provide the first real test of how these new systems perform when they're actually working hard. The fact that Mercedes feels ready for that challenge speaks volumes about their preparation. But perhaps the most telling aspect of Chauvelin's assessment was his praise for the collaborative effort between Brackley and Brixworth. The power unit integration has been seamless, which historically has been a strength for Mercedes. When your chassis and engine teams work in perfect harmony, it creates opportunities that competitors struggle to match. The timing of this success is crucial. With the first official pre-season test still weeks away, Mercedes has essentially given themselves a head start. While other teams will be using precious Bahrain track time to solve basic reliability issues, Mercedes can focus on pure performance development. This early advantage could prove decisive in what promises to be an incredibly competitive season. The 2026 regulations were designed to level the playing field, but Mercedes appears to have adapted faster than anyone expected. The implications extend beyond just this season, too. The foundation they've built with the W17 could pay dividends for years to come. When you nail the fundamental architecture on a new set of regulations, it often translates into sustained success. Of course, testing times don't win championships, and Mercedes knows this better than anyone. They've been on both sides of the testing hero narrative. But the combination of reliability, progressive improvement, and systematic development suggests this isn't just smoke and mirrors. What we witnessed in Barcelona might very well be the moment Mercedes announced their return to the front of the grid. After years of playing catch-up, they've positioned themselves perfectly for the new era of Formula One. The question now isn't whether they can compete, it's whether anyone can keep up. Picture this. It's December 12th, 2025, and Lando Norris has just been crowned Formula One World Champion for the first time. The champagne is flowing, the cameras are flashing, and McLaren is on top of the world. But here's the twist that nobody wants to talk about. History suggests Lando's celebration might be short-lived. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're diving deep into why the odds are already stacked against Norris defending his title in 2026. Before we get started, if you're a Formula One fan who loves deep dives into the sport's most intriguing storylines, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we uncover today. Now, I know what you're thinking. Norris just won his first championship. Surely he's riding high and ready to dominate again? Well, that's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. The brutal truth is that no British driver in Formula One history has ever successfully defended their maiden championship immediately the following year. Not one. And the pattern runs deeper than you might imagine. Let's start with the most obvious comparison. Lewis Hamilton burst onto the scene and claimed his first championship in 2008, driving for McLaren with Mercedes power. Sound familiar? That's exactly the same combination Norris used to win in 2025. But here's where it gets interesting. Hamilton's title defense in 2009 was an absolute disaster. McLaren completely failed to adapt to the sweeping regulation changes that hit the sport, leaving their car lacking downforce, balance, and outright pace. While Hamilton struggled, Brawn GP capitalized and dominated the early part of the season. The parallels between Hamilton's situation in 2009 and Norris's position heading into 2026 are genuinely striking. Both drivers faced major regulation changes immediately after winning their first title with the McLaren-Mercedes partnership. Both had to rely on their teams to translate championship momentum into a completely new era of Formula One. And history shows us exactly how that worked out for Hamilton. But wait, it gets worse. Let's talk about Jenson Button, another cautionary tale that should have McLaren executives losing sleep. After winning his championship with Brawn in 2009, Button moved to McLaren for his title defense in 2010. Once again, we see the same story playing out. Button found himself driving a fundamentally different car, with regulation changes affecting everything from tire compounds to aerodynamic packages. Despite plenty of podium finishes, he couldn't string together enough race wins to mount a serious title challenge. Now here's a statistic that will blow your mind. McLaren has historically struggled when regulation cycles reset. You have to go all the way back to 1998 and 1999 to find the last time a first-time champion at McLaren successfully defended their title the following year. That was Mika Hakkinen, and we're talking about nearly 3 decades ago. 3 decades. In a sport where technology evolves at breakneck speed, that's practically ancient history. This brings us to one of the most crucial factors working against Norris: McLaren's track record with regulation changes. The team has consistently shown a tendency to start slowly when new technical regulations are introduced. It's almost become their calling card. While other teams adapt quickly and hit the ground running, McLaren often finds itself playing catch-up in the early phases of new regulation cycles. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. Let's contrast McLaren's struggles with Red Bull's recent success. Red Bull has proven remarkably adept at converting first-time champions into multiple title winners. Sebastian Vettel won 4 consecutive championships from 2010 to 2013, and Max Verstappen followed that with 4 straight titles from 2021 to 2024. What's particularly impressive about Red Bull's record is that they navigated the major aerodynamic overhaul in 2022 without missing a beat. The regulation changes that arrived midway through Verstappen's title run didn't slow them down at all. This raises a fundamental question. Is this really about a British curse, or is it more specifically about McLaren's organizational DNA? The evidence strongly suggests it's the latter. McLaren, despite their illustrious history, has repeatedly struggled to maintain momentum when the technical goalposts shift. It's not about nationality or driver ability. It's about institutional adaptability. Now, I want to be fair to Norris here because he does have several advantages that previous McLaren champions didn't enjoy. Unlike Hamilton or Button, who were relatively new to their championship-winning teams, Norris is deeply embedded within McLaren's structure. He's built strong relationships with engineers and understands the car's fundamental characteristics and has the kind of technical feedback loop that can be invaluable during development phases. Norris also benefits from having Oscar Piastri as his teammate. Piastri finished 3rd in the championship standings in 2025, providing McLaren with valuable data from both cars throughout the season. This two-pronged approach to development could give McLaren an edge they've lacked in previous regulation transitions. But even with these advantages, the challenges facing Norris are immense. New technical regulations don't just change car performance. They can completely shuffle the competitive order. Teams that dominated one era can find themselves struggling in the next, while previously midfield teams can suddenly emerge as championship contenders. The 2009 season, where Braun GP came from nowhere to win both championships, is the perfect example of how quickly fortunes can change. The psychological pressure on Norris will also be intense. Defending a maiden championship is completely different from chasing your first title. The expectations shift dramatically. Instead of being the underdog fighting to prove himself, Norris will have a target on his back from day one. Every other team will be studying McLaren's 2025 success, looking for weaknesses to exploit. Every race weekend will bring questions about whether he can maintain his championship form. There's also the technical challenge of developing a championship-winning car under new regulations. In 2025, McLaren found the sweet spot with their car's aerodynamics, suspension setup, and power unit integration. But 2026 brings a completely new set of technical challenges. The team will essentially be starting from scratch, and there's no guarantee that the engineering solutions that worked in 2025 will translate to success in 2026. The tire situation adds another layer of complexity. Formula One's tire compounds and construction can have massive impacts on competitive balance. Teams that excelled with one tire specification can struggle when the rubber changes. McLaren will need to ensure their 2026 car works effectively with whatever tire compounds are introduced. And this is yet another variable that could upset their competitive position. Looking at the broader competitive landscape, Norris will face challenges from multiple fronts. Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull will all be pushing hard to reclaim their positions at the top of the sport. These teams have vast resources and deep technical expertise. They won't simply accept McLaren's dominance without a fight. The regulation changes also level the playing field to some extent. While McLaren enters 2026 as the defending constructors' champions, the new technical rules mean that past success provides limited advantage. Every team starts the new regulation cycle with roughly equal opportunities to find performance gains. Perhaps most importantly, Formula One has become incredibly competitive in recent years. The gap between the fastest and slowest cars has narrowed significantly compared to previous eras. This means that small development missteps can have massive championship implications. McLaren cannot afford to get their 2026 car concept wrong, even slightly. So what does all this mean for Lando Norris and his 2026 championship defense? The historical precedent is clear. British drivers have consistently failed to successfully defend maiden championships immediately the following year. McLaren has struggled with regulation transitions for decades. The technical challenges of 2026 are substantial, and the competitive landscape is more intense than ever. However, Norris does have some factors working in his favor. His deep integration within McLaren, his technical understanding of the cars, and his partnership with Piastri could provide crucial advantages. The question is whether these positives can overcome the weight of history and the technical challenges ahead. The 2026 Formula One season promises to be absolutely fascinating. Will Norris break the curse and become the first British driver to successfully defend a maiden championship? Or will history repeat itself, with McLaren struggling to adapt to new regulations while their champion fights an uphill battle? One thing's certain, we're in for an incredible ride. Make sure you're subscribed because we'll be covering every twist and turn of this championship battle as it unfolds.